Hello and welcome to Walk the Talk. I'm Shekhar Gupta, back at Firozshah Kotla after a long time. In fact, back at the cricket stadium after a long time. And my guest this week, not exactly a cricket star, but a cricket writing star, Gideon Haigh, the great Australian cricket writer. People say the finest in the world now, but among the finest.
Lovely to meet you, Shekhar.
And for sure among the most passionate cricket writers and cricket supporters.
And one of the most incompetent cricketers going around. I'm quite enjoying watching this game in the background at the moment, seeing how it's done. There's a couple of local under-23 teams.
Yeah, we organised it for you because
Thank
you love club cricket. So
well, actually, I quite like watching cricket from side on because I have a very vivid recollection of going to the Boxing Day Test match in 1977 and watching Beatty and Chandrasekhar bowling from side on. If you're a young man in Australia in those days, as I was, learning to love cricket, cricket was all about pace bowling at that stage. Lillian Thompson and Robertson Holding. But that summer in 77-8 was the first summer I got to see really high-class spin bowling. And in that Test match, you might remember, Chandra got 12 for 104, 6 for 52 in both innings, and naught in both innings.
Right.
And
that was a world record, I think he held.
It was. Identical analyses in both innings. I love that. And watching how different the trajectory of the ball was from side on, it sort of revealed to me a whole new dimension of cricket. Cricket done, quite subtly and quite magically, and quite intriguingly. And I'm an off spinner now, a terrible off spinner, but I often think of that early experience of watching batsmen beaten in the flight, beaten by guile. It was the first time I saw it, and I've never forgotten it.
Well, I think I remember somewhere here in my childhood watching Prasanna beat Bill Lawry with an arm ball.
Yeah.
Bill Lawry searching for spin that wasn't there.
Well, he was a Victorian. We're a bit thick in Victoria.
But off spin, there was an Australian weakness before off spin. It's not there anymore.
Well, look, off spin in Australia is a mug's game. The pitches are just too flat and too hard.
Right.
That's why we have tended to prefer wrist spin in Australia.
Yes.
Yeah. But finger spin...
I remember I saw John Gleeson here in 1969.
Really? Okay. Well, I think finger spin troubles us because we think that finger spinners just shouldn't be allowed to bowl. They shouldn't be allowed to get batsmen out. I know that Mark Waugh always held finger spin in utter contempt. You blast these blokes out of the attack. So they kind of get under Australia's skin in a way because they think that you should be able to get away with anything against them. But I remember Bishan in that summer of 77-8, he took 31 wickets. That was the best analysis by a finger spin bowler in Australia that I can remember. And he just did it all in the head. It's all in the mind.
Yes, because he never had to turn too much.
No,
Maybe
he never
did. Turn
did.
the odd one to put it doubt in your mind.
Yes, yeah.
And then it was just variation.
Yeah.
But cricket's now changed completely. We just saw this 264.
Yeah, how about that? How many can they make, do you think, in an ODI innings?
Well, I think 430 has been crossed.
It has?
Past year. And that too not against a minnow, but between Australia and South Africa.
Well, in a sense, what Rohit Sharma's done is simply sustain a T20 scoring rate over the course of a 50-over innings.
Right.
So in a sense, it is thinkable if you can endure for that long. Of course, these days, 50 overs almost seems quite long by comparison with the standard IPL game.
But if I can take you back, maybe some of it started from Test cricket. It was when Australians used to put up 400 runs on day one of a Test match.
Yeah.
Where you had fantastic openers and number 3.
Yes.
And the Test was over on day one when you had the great Steve Waugh team.
That's right. And I think in general, the batsman has over the last 10 years become increasingly pampered. As the schedule's grown more demanding, that kind of militates against bowlers being able to sustain fitness over long periods, being able to bowl fast on a sustained basis, being able to come up day after day. That kind of cricket is conducive to batting records being broken. And it was funny last summer in Australia, all of a sudden we were reminded just how exciting high quality fast bowling that threatens life and limb is. And that was a great reminder for administrators because they've convinced themselves that the only thing that people want to watch these days is 4s and 6s. They are the most telegenic of cricket skills.
That's when you reinvented Mitchell Johnson.
That's right. Well, there was a session at Brisbane on the second day where I think 32 runs were scored between lunch and tea, and it was the tensest cricket that you could possibly imagine. England lost 6 for 9 at one stage, and you daren't leave your seat. Every ball counted. It was absolutely electrifying. I wish that more administrators had been there to see how captivated that crowd was by that spectacle.
So it's not just 4s and 6s.
No, it's not.
Because Test cricket changed once first you changed it, and then we found Sehwag.
Yeah, well, Sehwag. Australians love Sehwag.
From this ground.
From this ground, indeed.
Yes.
Yeah. And a guy who sort of, the other interesting thing about him is I think he learned cricket from TV, watching Tendulkar on TV,
yes.
and simply kind of imitated what he saw. So in a sense, television, for all its the problematic aspects of it, has been the great international coach. More people learn cricket from TV than will ever get the opportunity to have access to professional coaching.
In fact, I remember a commentator, was it Tony Gregg, maybe yes, maybe not, who said India has 2 Tendulkars. When Sehwag and Tendulkar opened against Sri Lanka, I think in a match, one of them is called Sehwag.
The ultimate bowling nightmare, the idea of 2 Tendulkars.
Right. Or idea of 2 Sehwags.
The idea of 2 Sehwags is...
They're best.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, they're both kind of unique, and I always got that sense with Tendulkar that certainly in the last sort of 5 or 6 years of his career that he was always keeping something in reserve, that there was a control about his game, that perhaps he apprehended how important his wicket was to the opposition, and that it was important tactically for him to preserve
was it a good thing or a bad thing? For India and for him?
You almost wish for Tendulkar that he'd had the opportunity to just completely indulge himself, to play, to explore the limits.
Frankly, as Gavaskar decided to do in the last phase of his
career.
Fact, I was present in 1983 when he scored that 100 against the West Indies, and he used a skull cap.
Yes.
And I think he gave up 2 decades of self-denial, or decade and a half of self-denial, and hooked the ball.
Yes.
And it was Malcolm Marshall and Andy Roberts. It wasn't.
Well, you know, when all else fails, all-out attack isn't a bad proposition as a last resort. You don't want to be doing it, of course, all the time. And I think these days, a lot of teams are struggling now to come back. Teams are good front runners these days. We've created a generation of...
Test matches are over in 3 days.
Well, yeah, exactly. Aggressive, rather brittle cricketers. And you only need to look at the margins of victory in Test cricket these days. Teams are getting walloped by an innings, 300 runs, getting beaten 4-0, 5-0. It's almost as though when aggression doesn't work, they have no alternative means of responding.
I mean, we just saw Australia lose so badly to Pakistan in neutral territory. Although, maybe an Aussie would argue that Abu Dhabi is not quite neutral territory when it comes to Pakistan.
I think it was certainly alien territory for Australians. The idea of playing cricket in an empty stadium, in that kind of very sterile environment that Dubai throws up, I think that was quite confronting for Australians, and not, of course, for Pakistan, because they've become very used to being there. It's funny, isn't it? We always used to say that Pakistan had the backing of their tremendously partisan crowds. Well, they've got used to the idea of playing without them, without that support, without that distraction. So perhaps that works in their favour.
But sad that Pakistan have to play their cricket elsewhere, because now again they are becoming an exciting team again.
They are, and it's sad for their fans that they won't have the opportunity to play in front of their own crowds. And it's sad for someone like Yunus Khan. I think he's only played 19 Test matches at home, and he is an outrageously good player.
Good player, yes.
Yeah, and a very, a throwback, a very old-fashioned Test quality batsman. Gee, he taught the Australians quite a lot of lessons about batting in 5-day cricket. I hope they can take them.
Such as what?
What I love about watching Yunus Khan is you would never know what had happened in the previous over. You would never know whether he'd hit 6 balls for 4 or he'd been beaten 6 times outside the off stump. He has the same positive body language all the time. He's like this, he's utterly imperturbable. Whereas some of the Australians look quite skittish in the middle. They don't suggest permanence. And they must be quite trying for the next man in to be watching in the dressing room. Steve Smith's a good player, but my word, he is like a severed nerve, the way in which he twitches around.
Yes. Bit like Jonty Rhodes, in fact. I mean, he's always doing this. But boy, can he hit the ball straight over the...
He's a lovely player, and he's he and Clark, in fact, he might even be a better player of spin now than Clark is. he looked positive. He looked animated. He looked eager for responsibility. I was surprised in the end that they didn't promote him to number 3 in that second test. He seemed like the logical answer.
But why are all teams losing overseas now? Everybody, except maybe South Africa.
Yeah.
Everybody loses overseas.
Yeah, well,
So there's no world-beating number 1 dominating team right now.
no, there's not. And maybe we've reached the kind of the end of dynasties. We went for 20 years with the West Indies on top. We went for 10 years with Australia on top. Maybe the game has been pulled so elaborately in different directions
1.5
now.
years with India is on top.
It's
At
not
least we
enough.
were not losing overseas.
And certainly
enough.
not with England. It's a
Yeah.
bit of a travesty when England's number 1 of anything, really.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
On that one, we entirely.
Well, I was looking the other day at the ICC rankings for individual players, the top 10 Test, ODI, and T20 players.
That was an appeal, slightly louder than.
Work on it, boys. Work on it. Workshop it. Go and talk to some Australians. We'll teach you. And it was
Appeal like an outrage had broken out.
you want to appeal as though there's absolutely no doubt, and that the umpire is the biggest fool on the ground if he doesn't give the decision in your favour.
Right.
And
They learn.
Indian
This is-
cricket's got a lot to learn.
This is under 23. What teams are these? Under 23. But which clubs or which sides? Or state trials. I see. So state trials stakes are very high. in
Yeah,
this
they are.
Delhi State,
They
yes.
are.
So you were talking about ICC
Yeah,
rankings.
there were, I think, the last time I looked, there were 24 batsmen and 23 bowlers across the potential 30 spaces in each of those faculties. And the only bowler who was in all 3 forms of the game was Syed Ajmal, and there was no batsman who was
And
in
Syed
all 3
Ajmal is
forms
out
of the
right
game.
now.
That's right.
Right.
So, in a sense,
All 3 forms is T20, ODI and Test.
perhaps we're creating 3 different forms, and one potential future of the game is that T20 goes off in its own direction and becomes like women's netball is to women's basketball, an offshoot, or rugby league is to rugby
as
union.
an old-fashioned cricket fan, you'll be very happy if that happens.
Well, there'll be. I actually don't mind T20. I think it's got some fantastic skills, and it's a game that has opened up areas of skill that we never imagined, like boundary fielding in T20 is absolutely extraordinary, isn't it?
You know,
the ability to
people
take catches on
jumping
the
throwing the ball back, going out, coming back.
things that were just never
Yes.
thinkable. The idea of scoring behind the wicketkeeper.
Yes.
No one ever
I think
dreamed
Angelo
of that
Matthews
before.
did that for the first time. That,
Yeah, yeah.
going across the boundary and throwing the ball back.
So it opens the windows of your mind to the potential of cricket. Of course, it also creates an awful lot of cricket that doesn't matter.
Right.
And I hate cricket that doesn't matter, that nothing hinges, that there's no context for. T20 internationals, they don't really lead anywhere apart
Right.
from every 4 years when we have the World T20. In a sense that the game is now so fragmented and so chaotic that if you wake up in the morning as a fan, it's very difficult to know exactly what you're going to get at any particular time. Even ODIs. ODIs is a very good format, but in the 4 years between the World Cups, they don't really matter all that much, except for financial reasons. I think
Well, these 5-match series are completely pointless.
well, they are, and there is an ICC World ODI Championship. You would be surprised to hear that, because I didn't know until I looked it up the other day. I think you get 125,000 if you're the world's top team on April the 1st, and 75,000 if you're the world's number 2 team, and no one else gets anything. And it's not as though it's sung from the rooftops that this championship exists. Cricket can't seem to make up its mind at the moment about what it is, and it's almost trying to cater to so many publics that it's lost any sense of an overarching importance.
You think BCCI has something to do with that? The evil BCCI, the evil 4-letter acronym.
Well, the self-interested BCCI, and of course all national boards are fundamentally self-interested, and getting more so, and the BCCI just has more self-interest than anybody else.
Because you described it as a sovereign republic of BCCI. I would call it the sovereign emirate of BCCI. No offense meant
No.
to Dubai and Abu Dhabi.
Well, I look, it's they've changed the way in which the game is governed. and they've remade, I think, the ICC to their own specifications. The ICC is now a members organisation where everyone goes to pursue their own agenda and is evaluated by the spoils that they can deliver for their home boards. And that is at the heart of cricket's dilemma at the moment, that no one seems to have any sort of superintending idea of what cricket's welfare constitutes.
But what are your
We don't want to walk behind the bowler's arm here, Shekhar. That would be a disgrace.
Absolutely. Can you imagine?
They'd probably deport me.
I think they will not complain about is Gideon Haigh
That's right.
breaking the rules.
Causing an international incident.
Absolutely, walking in front of the side screen. And can you imagine that fellow is trying to get into the Delhi under-23 team?
I could change someone's career here.
Someone's career, not this way. So, tell me your specific complaints with BCCI. Teach him to appeal.
Yeah,
You'll never get somebody out like that.
Nice ball, actually.
Yeah.
My specific complaints about the BCCI, well, that they're unaccountable to anyone.
I'll repeat one of your lines to you. I know
Yeah.
you complained about old lines getting repeated.
Yeah.
You said when English ran cricket, it was anarchy tempered by despotism. Now, when BCCI runs it, it's despotism tempered by anarchy.
Did I write that? What a great line.
Absolutely.
I think cricket's become such a high commercial and political stakes activity in India that it's problematic for everybody else. And the interpenetration of cricket and commerce and politics in Indian sport, well, it's a dilemma for everyone. And in a sense, all the other boards around the world and all the other cricket fans and all the other cricket players are disenfranchised as a result. Everyone has to dance to the tune of a single country. And that wasn't good when England were doing it. It wasn't good when England were doing it in cahoots with Australia. And it's funny, India, who were actually quite zealous in their pursuit of the idea of democracy at cricket's governing table, have actually become the next generation of despots.
But India is now trying to co-opt England and Australia. So it's become the big three.
Well, I think it's more England and Australia trying to stay in the tent with India. It's a big one with two kind of auxiliaries who are doing their best to endear themselves to the BCCI.
Look, BCCI's argument will be that you guys didn't complain so much when white man was controlling cricket.
Yeah.
Now poor India.
I wasn't around in those days. Don't hold me responsible.
Well, you are responsible for the past generation, if not the future one.
I think they more look at the example of the US as a unipolar power.
Right.
They think, well, if it's good enough for the US to, say, dominate the World Trade Organization, then there's no reason why the BCCI shouldn't be dominating the ICC.